Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am Saad Khan, a writer, researcher, columnist, and a freelance analyst on the Muslim world. I have been working for about 2 decades on the issues of governance, human rights, rule of law, democracy, and gender empowerment in the world of Islam. I have been prolifically writing about many issues. Even in my student life, I wrote my first book, Reasserting International Islam. I discussed the Muslim world, its resurgence, with special reference to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, that was at that time called the Organization of the Islamic Conference. I have been also analyzing and studying the role of my own country, Pakistan, and how it interacted with the Muslim world, and wrote a book, Friends Indeed, because I believe that Pakistan and the Muslim community as a whole are friends indeed. I have also written a book on the wife of the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and the title of the book is Begum Maryam Jinnah. And I got inspired with her courage and the role model she is for Muslim women of today. In addition, there have been chapters contributed to various books, ranging from the history of South Asia to the nuclearization problem in the world. Today, I will be talking about my own perceptions about what is taking place in the Muslim world right now. This is a moment of turmoil, not only in the Middle East, but all across the Muslim world. Let me begin with Iran. Iran took a lead in the Muslim world, having the first major civilian revolution in 1979. Iran was the first country in the contemporary era in the 20th century to have a written constitution far back in 1906. Right from the tobacco movement of late 19th century, Iran has been leading the Muslim thought, the Muslim political activism, and the Muslim gender equality movement. And today, in the past 10 to 12 months, we have seen an upheaval unfolding in the whole of the Middle East. Let's start with Tunisia. Zainul Abidin Ben Ali, leading this country for about 24 years. In fact, Tunisia has seen only 2 rulers since its independence in 1956. For the first 32 years, Habib Bourguiba and his autocracy, and then through a palace coup, Zainul Abidin Ben Ali and his family treating the whole country as his fiefdom. May I say that his party, National Democratic Rally, had treated the whole country as hostage, as private property, and there was a limit to the public tolerance. It's about 3 decades and 1 generation after the Iranian Revolution that the much anticipated, much expected, and much awaited revolution and awakening in the whole Muslim world has started unfolding. Zainul Abidin Ali's forces brutally suppressed the unarmed civilians, but the civilians, the people, were fed up with the ruthlessness of daily life in an autocracy. Ben Ali is no more. Rather, he is facing trials for embezzlement, for amassing ill-gotten wealth, and for his nepotism, supporting his own family, controlling the resources of the whole country. Next to come in line was Egypt, and Egypt is very important for our understanding of the Muslim world. Egypt is the largest country in the Middle East, It's the oldest, having an ancient civilization dating back 3 to 4,000 years. And Egypt always take the lead in any political change that takes place within the Middle East. Let me say that had the revolution taken place in any country other than Egypt, I would have been tempted to believe that probably it can stay at that. But if history is any guide, whenever some change has taken place in Egypt, the rest of the Arab world has followed. So if Egypt is the second country where an orange revolution or tulip revolution or whatever you may call the civil non-violent revolutions overthrowing autocratic regimes, I am pretty sure that rest of the Arab world is going to follow sooner or later. Hosni Mubarak, his sons, his wife are all facing trials for corruption, for embezzlement of money, and of course for crimes against humanity by ordering ruthless use of force against unarmed Egyptians protesting his rule. Hosni Mubarak was the longest ruler in 2 centuries in Egypt, only vied in the early 1800s by Muhammad Ali Pasha. But even his day had to come to an end someday, as it has done in recent past. Hosni Mubarak is a modern day version of the erstwhile Shah of Iran, and Hosni Mubarak is going to meet his destiny when the trials that are underway against him are brought to conclusion. After Egypt, the winds of change have moved in all 4 directions. Yemen to the south of Middle East, Bahrain to the eastern side of the Middle East, Libya and Morocco on the west of Egypt. There is hardly a place within the Middle East where the people have not risen up, the people have not shed their fear of the state tyranny and come out on the streets to demand freedom. Hurrah! Let us talk about Yemen first, because Ali Abdullah Saleh, the long-serving president of Yemen, had been the first one in mid-90s among the Arab leadership to call upon his peers to embrace reform. He would be the first one telling the other rulers that the days of yesterday, that the ways of yesterday would not survive in the future, in the tomorrow of our nations. But unfortunately, he has also become an agent of inertia, of resistance to this reform. All of us know that Ali Abdullah Saleh himself has been injured in the ongoing disturbances in Yemen, and he is under treatment in Saudi Arabia. Yes, he does say that he will come back, but so did the Shah of Iran when he left in the mid of January 1979, that it was only a temporary trip abroad for personal and health reasons, but he boarded his plane in Tehran, never to return or set foot on the soil of Iran again. Probably this is going to be the fate of Ali Abdullah Saleh as well. Probably Yemenis are going to see a new dawn. Probably the Yemenis are going to have a much better future. And Yemen would never ever be the same as before. Likewise, the demise of Colonel Gaddafi is now written on the walls. It's a foregone conclusion now. Unfortunately, Colonel Gaddafi did not give in and rather threw his own country, which he says his beloved country, in the throes of a civil war based on tribal allegiances. Because he won't go away, and the other tribes, the other ethnicities within Libya would not tolerate it. So Libya has seen a lot of bloodshed in the past few months. Gaddafi has shown his ruthlessness by the statements he made about Benghazi, forewarning them of massacre, and this actually expedited the United Nations resolutions calling for military action to protect civilians. And in my opinion, the Western powers are not going to go away like this. Let the fruit of their military operation be thrown to the dustbin. No way. The tenacity of Gaddafi is for all there to see. However, in the long run, there is a limit after which Gaddafi will have to give in, or he will be replaced by his own clique. There are so many defections in the recent week from Gaddafi camp that survival beyond the next few weeks is very much in doubt. The only survivor, I would say, in this game of power politics is Bahrain. Bahraini monarchy represents a sectarian minority within the country. The majority community of the country are denied their rights, their share in jobs, in government positions, and even in business opportunities. With the help of Saudi forces and those from the United Arab Emirates, there is a temporary calm, but it appears to me that it's a lull before the storm. Bahraini forces have silenced most of the dissent through most ruthless and third-degree means employed against their own citizens, their own subjects, unarmed protesters only demanding their rights. Bahrain again cannot stay on like this forever. Bahrain knows that it's a ticking time bomb of public discontent that may erupt any day, anytime, anywhere in Bahrain again, and it's open to question how much the Saudi forces or Emirati forces would be able to do if the whole population or the most part of it turns against the monarchy. While talking about the monarchies, let's talk about a republican monarchy. The Assad dynasty in Syria is anything but a monarchy, is anything but a democracy. Bashar al-Assad succeeded his father, Hafiz al-Assad, and he has been more ruthless than his father had ever been. The will and capacity of the state of Syria to murder its own citizens has been alarming even by the Middle Eastern authoritarian standards. Bashar al-Assad and his father Hafiz al-Assad have killed more Syrians in peacetime than the Israelis have murdered Syrians in all the three wars combined. Syrian forces are using inhuman brutality and excessive force against the civilians who are being murdered, who are being butchered for no fault of theirs except crying hurrah, that is freedom. Although Colonel Gaddafi has gotten his arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court at Hague, it is indeed unfortunate the world is dilly-dallying in issuing similar arrest warrants for Bashar al-Assad and his clique. Be that as it may, it's almost a foregone conclusion that Syria, with its present dispensation, with the Ba'ath party in power, cannot live like this in the foreseeable future. Just like the National Democratic Rally of Ben Ali has been dissolved in Tunisia, the NDP, the National Democratic Party in Egypt, is a memory of the past. The de-Baathification in Iraq has purged the government, the security services and the civil services from the remnants of Ba'ath party activists and followers and sympathizers. Syria is also next in line, where Baathism would become an anathema, an invective for any Syrian citizen in not too distant future. Now let us move to the three major monarchies in the Middle East. Morocco, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. It is true that there have been demonstrations in Saudi Arabia, there have been demonstrations in Amman, the capital of Jordan, and there have been demonstrations in Morocco. But not to the extent, but not to the level, not to the frequency that has taken place elsewhere in the Middle East, like in Syria, Libya, and Yemen. But probably the people of these three monarchies are just waiting to see the outcome of the struggles of their Arab brethren elsewhere in the Arab world. Both King Abdullah of Jordan and King Muhammad of Morocco have announced reforms, but they are too little, too late. It is evident that both the monarchs are not willing to give away their powers so easily. Many of the reforms are mere cosmetic, and neither of the two kings has announced confining his role to a constitutional monarchy. The hiring and firing of prime ministers, of the cabinets, and even of the parliaments would rest with the kings, and that is not something that is going to survive. People want real political reform. People want their destiny, their rights in their own hands. People want the power to appoint, change, and replace their governments. In Saudi Arabia, even the women have started to defy the government. For example, about the driving ban, that no woman can be behind a steering wheel in Saudi Arabia. Now in the 21st century, this is simply ludicrous. And women face flogging and face torture, arbitrary arrest and detention by the police, but they still choose to defy the state writ on this issue, which deprives women most of the rights at par with those of the men. Women, as a protest, come to drive their cars, face arrests, but then it only strengthens their resolve. Saudi Arabia, which is the only country in the world which is named after its own ruling family, is not at all likely to stay that way in the next one decade or so. There is no doubt that King Abdullah believes in reforms, but probably his hands are tied behind because of the pressure of the family, the ruling royal family, the very powerful clergy in Saudi Arabia, and other conservative forces within the kingdom. There are some countries which have multi-party democracy. Turkey is a very strong and evident example of this. The ruling party is there because the people want it to be there. It has won 3rd consecutive general elections only last month. And in Turkey, at least, the people control their own destiny. Whether we like it or not, today's Afghanistan, after 3 decades of bloodshed, and today's Iraq, after 3.5 decades of Baath party rule, have some semblance of multi-party democracy, some semblance of more than a rubber stamp parliament, some judicial autonomy being stressed, and some freedom of press and media. being there. I have no doubt in my mind that this democracy in Afghanistan or Iraq or Turkey is one of the best things that had happened to the Muslim world in the recent past. Many people believe that democracy cannot be imported, but the democracy in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Turkey is rooted in the Islamic principles of egalitarianism, in the history of Islamic civilization, and in the teachings of our religion. Neither in Afghanistan nor in Iraq, the democratic system is a mirror of the United States system. It's wrong to say that democracy is being imported from the United States or any Western power for that matter. Thousands of people have lost their lives resisting the Taliban in Afghanistan and Saddam Hussein in Iraq. They were not doing it for America. Rather, the Muslim world is proud, and rightfully proud, of having a long history of accountable government, dating as far back as the 7th century AD, after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. There is no doubt in my mind that just like the domino effect after the fall of the Soviet Empire, after the crumbling of the Berlin Wall, after the fall of communism in 1989-90, there would be a domino effect in the whole of Middle East and the Muslim world, where more and more representative governments with a sovereign parliament, impartial judiciary, independent media would lay foundations to a new, more harmonious, more democratic Muslim world. If I were to count 3 most decisive factors that would shape the future of the Muslim world, I would rate justice and democracy as number 1. As Hazrat Ali Karamullahu Wajhu said, that an un-Islamic government can last a while, but injustice cannot survive. And what is greater injustice than a totalitarian regime on a modern 21st century nation? Justice demands that every human being must have equal say in the affairs of the government, must have the right to express his or her opinion in any way he or she likes, and the right to hold and dispose of property, and the right to have recourse to courts in case of dispute or violation of his or her rights. The second factor I believe is going to be decisive for the make or break of the Muslim world, for the future prosperity of the Muslim world, is education. Japan, United States, United Kingdom, and other great industrial powers did not become great by military might, but by the force of education. Our own Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, used to say, Al-ilmu salahi, knowledge is my weapon. He was the one making education incumbent on every Muslim man and every Muslim woman. He was the one who wanted Muslims to seek knowledge even if they had to go to China for that. And he was the one who released all prisoners of the Battle of Badr only on the condition that every prisoner who could read or write himself must teach reading and writing to at least 10 Muslims. Education is a fard, is an obligation on the Muslims after the 5 fundamental obligations that the Muslims have. Third and last thing, among the important trio that I believe would shape the destiny and future of the Muslim world, is the gender empowerment, the eradication of gender disparity, equal rights to men and women, and Muslim men and women shaping the Muslim destiny together as equal partners. If one ethnic group dominates the other, if one gender dominates the other, if one sect tries to dominate the other, there would always be reaction, and the whole energies would be wasted in this conflict. Therefore, I believe that the Muslim feminist movement all across the Muslim globe has a very positive contribution to play for the future of this ummah. In the end, I would only say that whatever is taking place in the whole of the Middle East is the history unfolding that would have seminal impact for centuries to come. We, as the Chinese say, are living in interesting times. I am happy that I am alive here to see this history unfolding itself. The best thing that could happen to the Muslim world is this movement for liberty, this movement for freedom, this movement for rights, this movement for justice, in which hundreds of Muslims, young men and women, old and the children, men and the women, have shed away their fear, and they are, mashallah, facing the bullets, facing the tear gas, facing the batons, facing incarceration, facing torture, very bravely, in anticipation of a better tomorrow for themselves and their posterity. History would always remember these men and women, old, young and children, who are out on the streets on the length and breadth of the Middle East today. Their names would be written in golden letters. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say that this movement in the Middle East is going to engulf other parts of the Muslim world. For example, the Central Asia, where Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan and Kazakhstan are facing the worst kinds of dictatorship. This is going to move on across the Saharan desert in Africa downwards to sub-Saharan Muslim countries from the northern Arab region. And the future of the Muslim world, I have full trust in Almighty Allah, is very bright. I am proud of the martyrs, and I think we all must be rightly so proud of them. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.